let's face it, for most of us, a big part of who you are is what you do in terms of your career.
Absolutely.
So I will work with these folks, and the first thing we have to do is understand what you can do, how you can change your path and do something, either change your industry or change your role, so that you are better aligned with who you are now.
Welcome back to the Balance Boldly podcast for ambitious women in business and a few brave men. I am Naketa Thigpen, your host and balance and relationship advisor, partnering with you to change the narrative to amplify intimacy within your relationships so you can have the freedom, flexibility, and confidence to thrive in work life and in love. My personal mission for this and every episode of the Balance Boldly podcast is to serve you with the tools you need for moving beyond just barely surviving the burnout of work and life, over the narrow hills of imposter syndrome, and through the barriers preventing you from being and doing greater. Welcome back to season 16. Oh, what an exciting time that we are having this fall with serving higher, deeper, greater in all that we do. This has been phenomenal. For those of you who have not done it yet, make sure that you go over to thigpro.com and get on the new wait list for everything you need for our next Joy Map Method cohort, 100 Days to Thrive. Make sure you do that, because we've already closed down the last one. We're already in the middle of it, in the throes, wrapping up to the end. There's some exciting things that have been happening in the cohort thus far. It's been phenomenal for all of our entrepreneurs and our entrepreneurial leaders that really just want to play bigger in their lives. So make sure you do that and get more information over at thigpro.com. For now, I want to welcome in a dear friend. I love this New York woman to life. She is amazing. She is fashionable. She has swag all up and down her. You'll just have to get a chance to meet her, know her, see her, and go to her website to really understand what I'm talking about. But for now, let me welcome Lisè Schwartz. She is a seasoned career transition specialist and coach, helping experienced professionals and re-entry candidates discover and establish new careers. Lisè's coaching extends beyond transitions so that she can help others achieve success in their careers with in-job coaching and a whole lot more. I'm literally giving you just a highlight of her. Lisè, welcome to the Balance Boldly podcast. How are you today?
Thanks, Naketa. I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I love your New York swagaliciousness that shows up with you wherever you go.
Well, you're not far behind. I know you're not from New York, but you certainly have the swag. So.
Aw, thank you. That says a lot coming from you, because you are like fashion diva. Your red lips is always popping, whether it's a red lip or a blush color or something, like you're always complimenting everything. And I know you have a fashion background and a designer background before you got into the growth and development space. But you carry all of you with you when you move forward. So I have to honor you for that, because I really do feel like you're like my little, New York Jewish female connection. Like you just got all this swag.
Well, thank you. When I was very young, just sort of moving into the training and performance improvement area, I was coming out of video production industry, and I worked with a fantastic mentor that I am still friendly with, who suggested that whenever you're training, you need to wear something very bright. And so red was my color, and that's when I sort of attached myself to that. And I think that people do, they sort of connect me to red. Maybe it's the red lipstick, maybe it's because I like wearing red, but that's how it developed. I have Marsha Meisland to thank for that.
Well, I love it. I mean, I have a similar flair for red. Even though purple is my favorite color, I actually don't wear a lot of purple. There's not a lot of purple anything in my closet, like maybe accents across my home. But in my closet, I don't really have much purple, but I will wear a red lip in a minute. And I definitely love, how the color just makes me feel a little brighter and a little bit bolder, literally, so I can balance boldly, right?
Right.
When I'm moving through. So I appreciate that. And it does stand out. It's one of the things that I can say helps to identify you in a crowd, because there's not a lot of women in the rooms that we maneuver in. And typically the women that are in there are not necessarily always standing out in the way that you do, so eloquently and with so much class. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
I think you're amazing. So today I would love for everyone to learn a little bit more about why you have focused on helping other people transition, because you do more than just maneuver them through the transition phase of their life and their career. You're really helping them kind of go beyond the transition so that they can do something greater and not just feel like they're stuck in like a rote past of work that they used to be known for, especially if they're ready for a change.
Right. And my sweet spot is change and transition. And whether it's with an organization or an individual, I feel as though I can be really helpful in that space. People, for the most part, are change resistant naturally and like to operate in their comfort zone. And when it comes to careers, especially because I deal with people who are changing careers, either mid or late life career changes, they really lose a lot of confidence around making a change because all of their experience and the things that they have been rewarded for and moved up the ladder, on the rungs of, is kind of, they're saying goodbye to it when they're making a change. So I think that I identify very well with sort of what people experience when they go through changes, as well as understanding what organizations experience when they go through changes. And I feel I can be very helpful in both cases. So if we're talking specifically about individuals, I help them from the moment of trying to make a decision about what to do now. So I know that you know this, Naketa, but just it helps sometimes to give an example of a typical kind of candidate for me. So maybe it's somebody who, let's say they're a CPA, an accountant, and they're working in a large firm. They may have, when they were, let's go all the way back to high school. When they were in high school, they did really well in math. And so it was suggested by their parents, by their guidance counselor, and so on. Well, you should major in math. You should perhaps go to a school where you can get a finance degree. And that's what they did. So at age 17, when you first start applying for schools, they made that decision. They applied to schools where they could come out with a finance degree, and they did well in school. And if they did well in school, most likely when they're graduating, they got picked up by one of the big eights. And that feels great. That feels just wonderful. You're hired, you got your first job, it's a great company, and you start working. And then you work your way up the ladder. And in the interim, you get promoted, and you maybe get married, and maybe you buy a house, and maybe you have a couple of kids. And then one day at age maybe 45, you wake up in the morning and you realize that I'm really not happy. I decided to go into this field when I was really a kid. I didn't know anything about myself. I really didn't. I made this decision based on things that were important to me then, perhaps, but maybe no longer. And I don't feel passionately about what I do. And this no longer really aligns with my interests, with my values. And, in this day and age, people are working 65, 70, 75 years old. And at age 45, you may think, geez, if I have to get up every day for another 20 years and go to work at this accounting firm, I'm going to blow my brains out.
Right.
But on the other hand, these are people who really feel like they have no options, and they feel stuck. They feel as though they can't they can't be irresponsible. They have a mortgage, they have a family. By this age, their couple of kids maybe are headed off to college,
Right.
and they want to be able to help them. So they're torn, and I know that you work with people like this all the time from a different perspective, not maybe necessarily thinking about a career change, but thinking about life in general. How do I make my life more meaningful? And let's face it, for most of us, a big part of who you are is what you do in terms of your career.
Absolutely.
So I will work with these folks, and the first thing we have to do is understand what you can do, how you can change your path and do something, either change your industry or change your role, so that you are better aligned with who you are now,
Right.
at age 45 or whatever age it is. And how can you incorporate into your work more of what you enjoy doing, what makes you happy, and while you still can rely upon the experience that you have and the skills that you've developed over the years, so that you don't have to start all over. Like, how many of us can, at age 45, with the lifestyle that you have, quit your job and take an unpaid internship, for example?
Right. Absolutely.
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
So I work with folks sort of, first of all, let's think about what you might want to do and what you can do, and let's put that stuff together. And then I help them kind of reinvent themselves so that they are credible to the employers that they're now going to apply for jobs with. I help them with networking. I help them with creating a new resume and LinkedIn profile and all of that. But mostly I help them, there's a big psychological and emotional component to this, and then they can't, in these situations, they cannot use traditional means to find a new job. They really have to network into these positions and use people and connections and so on, in a way where they're not going to get a job by clicking send and shooting their resume off to a website.
Right, exactly. Well, you make a lot of good points, because you're basically helping people who are at a different life stage of their life. And I know you work with people of all ages, but on average, they're at a certain life stage where they're really ready to do something different, and they want to create a new reality because the old one is just no longer serving them, which is why they feel out of balance in the first place. When you're out of alignment because you're not living your truth and you're not doing the work that you truly feel connected to. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, passion work. It just needs to be something you're connected to now, and not just good at, but good at and actually want to do. You feel off balance. So you're helping them create a kind of new reality for themselves that they can feel good about as they move forward, and therefore, i.e., gain some balance in this new life that they're trying to create for themselves. And I respect that.
Well, it's interesting because my clients come to me having experienced different events in their lives. So, sometimes it could be the result of downsizing, and they're out of work now. They, oftentimes they may leave with a package if they've been in their job for a time and say, okay, you know what, I just don't want to go back. That's one thing. Another thing might be just an awareness. They may have gone to a retreat that you ran. They may have, have in some way, something has occurred in their life that has caused them to face the fact that this is not making them happy anymore. Or it could be, some other event. So one of my clients recently lost her husband, and very suddenly to to brain cancer,
Oh,
and
wow.
has made a decision that she now wants to serve in a different way than she has in the past. And she is bound and determined to go to work for a company that is that is a cancer research company that's working on a cure for cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really given purpose to her life at a time when it was very, very important. I mean, she now is focused on something as opposed to being in grief, just in a state of grief.
Right. That's huge, especially because you're giving her a new anchor. And my heart goes out to your client because, losing a spouse is significantly horrible and life changing, especially when there was really no kind of notice that, something was wrong and, the illness just kind of came upon. So my heart really goes out for her. That's horrible. But the work you do is so important because of that. And I have to ask, like, did you transition into this work helping people transition themselves, like double use of
So it's really interesting.
right?
I do work. The other part of we're really talking about the work I do with individuals, but I do a lot of work with organizations around change and transition. A huge component of my business is around leadership and management training,
Mm-hmm.
communications, performance improvement, and so on. And at one time, I was called into a company, a global utility company, because they were familiar with my work around change and transition, mergers and acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
And they were outsourcing a big department, their IT department, and there were 600 people who were going to be impacted by this. And they knew that they needed to bring in an expert on change and transition to work with these 600 people. Many of them had been with this company since the time they were in high school. The company had paid for many of them to go to college to get advanced degrees, and they had climbed the ladder within the organization. And now here they were. Some of them were still very young, but had in some cases worked for the company for 30 years. And they, for the very first time, were going to be out in the job market, having never really applied for a job in modern times, so to speak. So most of these people, the last time they had done any interviewing, there really wasn't even an internet.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so they didn't know anything about LinkedIn. Their idea of a resume was so old-fashioned. They were resumes that are just not used anymore. The curriculum vitae, the old-fashioned
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they had no sense of how today's interviews are run and so on. And so I went in to this organization and designed a program first of all, about change and transition, so that these individuals who were going to go through this were kind of aware of what they were going to experience and how to successfully navigate those waters and come out on the other side more successful.
Yeah.
And then I trained them in interviewing skills, how to write, a resume, how to create a LinkedIn profile, the whole gambit of creating all of your job search tools, how to use them, how to network, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
When I was doing it with this organization, it occurred to me that this is a market, that there are a lot of people out there
Right.
who are in the same situation for this and other reasons. I mean, mergers, acquisitions, outsourcing, and they are up a creek without a paddle. And I have some paddles that I can hand out. So that's really how I got into it. And it's really nice that I can look at it from the perspective of the organization and the individual.
I love that. What is the old quote? Something like the mother of invention is necessity.
Yes.
Right. But then there's also the reality that you yourself, as an ambitious woman in business who's a high achiever, went through your own very layered transitions that some were organic, out of the necessity of just needing to change, because you obviously have a very diverse background with being a creative. And you were able to literally walk your talk based on what you train and teach other people to do. You were able to do for yourself and create a whole entire brand around it, which in and of itself, as a mother, as a woman who's very, connected to community, and I know you do a lot with your synagogue and you sit on boards and you have a lot of layers to you too that we won't have time to dig, unpeel and dig into now, but you have a lot of things on your plate. So I have to ask you, with all of that, how do you give yourself permission to pause?
Well, you actually hit on it when you said I'm involved with my synagogue. That is part of it, that I kind of make sure that in some way, shape, or form I observe my Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my permission to pause, and it sort of is driven almost by a higher power in some ways. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that, I think that you and I, Naketa, have had some great conversations about this, and that is that I don't actually keep a regular schedule, because a lot of my clients, especially the in-job coaching that I do, because oftentimes once I make a relationship with a transition candidate and they move into a new career, they oftentimes continue to use me to coach them on the job in their new career. All right. And so many of them don't have time to do that during the workday. And so I will schedule, I have session time evenings and on Sundays. So because I do that, I am very guilt-free about pausing at other times.
Yeah.
Maybe sleeping in of a morning, or maybe taking a Tuesday to do things I want to do. And I balance my schedule according to the needs of my client and my own needs, as opposed to a 9 to 5, 5-day work week.
I love that. You're serving higher, literally, by making sure that you're intentional about your own balance and your own needs, and what I would call, selfish behavior, which I love. I'm a big proponent of selfishness for the fuel of filling up so that you can pour out, like taking care of you so that when you do something that is extraneous or extensive, like I know you fly around, you have to travel for work, you have to do a lot of that, and that can take a lot out of anyone. But you can do it without regret, knowing that the majority of the time, you make sure that you fill yourself up and that you're taking care of yourself, which is important.
And I found that having control over my own schedule, because I have my own business, is empowering in some ways. It's also very challenging, and requires a tremendous amount of discipline, because I would rather play than work sometimes. And so there's that, but it also allows me to manipulate accordingly, what works for me.
No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense and I love it. So tell everyone how they can connect with you to learn more about Lisè Schwartz and all the great work that you do in the world for whatever they need help with individually and organizationally.
Well, I have a website, and it is really simply lisèschwartz.com. The thing is that, like my red lipstick, one of the things that distinguishes me is that my first name, Lisè, is spelled Lise, instead of the traditional Lisa with an A. So it's lisèschwartz.com. You can schedule time with me. I love to talk to people. I do free introductory calls, and that's listed there when I do them. You can schedule time with me. You can call my office, 215-635-3561. I know I don't have to say that. You're going to publish all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very accessible. I like to talk to people. I like to help them out, even if they are not going to become a client of mine, because there is a tremendous amount of free information. There are great resources for people who are transitioning.
I love that. Lisè, thank you so much for carving out time with us today, for all of the entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial leaders that are listening and tuned in today to get more of these valuable tools. I knowing how busy your schedule is, I appreciate you carving out this time for us. So I thank you.
Always time for you, Naketa. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
You too. Oh, Balance Boldly listeners, you are amazing as always. I hope that you got all of that greatness, soaked it in, and if you forgot anything, no worries. Check out the show notes below. Make sure that you go to lisèschwartz.com and get all of the information you need about the great programs and resources she has, as well as setting up that introductory call. There was never a harmful thing that ever came from talking to someone wise. So make sure that you get on the call with her, because she is one of the wiser people that I know, and I implore you to do so. And if you like what you heard so far on the Balance Boldly for Ambitious Women in Business and a Few Brave Men podcast, make sure you subscribe, rate, and share. Help us ensure that the other ambitiously bold and brave have access to all these valuable life, love, and business balance tools. And if you still would like to connect with me, I'm at Ask Naketa everywhere. IG, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. Just connect with me, ask your questions, or email directly at asknaketa@bigpro.com. In the interim, I want you to go, create your balance, create your joy, but remember to do it boldly. Thank you for listening.